How do you pronounce the name of your project? Is it Mannahattan? Is that how we say it?
Yeah, I call it the Mannahattan Project.
Mannahattan. I think you had the goal of getting out your book Mannahattan in time for the 400th anniversary of Henry Hudson sailing down, making his famous voyage.
What we're doing is I'm publishing a book, Mannahattan, Natural History of New York City. So, there's sort of this irony that we start the founding of New York City in 1609 when Henry Hudson sails in, because he had a journal and his first mate wrote a journal. But in fact, there were people here that were here for 10,000 years. So 10,000 years of history that we never appreciate. And then we spend, bookshelves on the last 400 years. Which doesn't say the last 400 years isn't important or interesting, but in some ways, what I'm trying to do is get back to that history before, to sort of restart the history of New York City. Not when Henry Hudson shows up, but maybe 2 hours before Henry Hudson shows up.
Would you say that you're bringing a sense of ecological history to the city and to the city's future?
One of the things I think is more novel about what we did is this idea of the mirror web that expresses the habitat relationships of all the plants and animals and the people too on Manhattan, and how they relate to the non-living parts of the environment. And the idea was that if you could map the things that species needs, so that's food and its water and its shelter and its habitat requirements, and its reproductive requirements, then you could make a first guess of what its distribution might have been. So we started documenting what those were, what those habitat relationships were, using standard field guides, the kind of things that many people have on their shelves, right? The Audubon Guide to Northeastern Forests or whatever, or standard plant guides. And we started compiling them across taxa. And when we did that, we saw that there were all these connections between them and that the data resembled a network. And there's all these great tools in social network analysis that come out of the social sciences that were pre-existing that we could just grab onto and apply to our problem. And that's how the mirror web idea was born.
That's good. A lot was lost by having the white man come and settle this island on top of what could have been Yosemite, but was something also gained by building Gotham City.
Right, right. Well, sometimes when there's an image in my book that's sort of the split screen that shows Manhattan on one side and Mannahattan on the other. And sometimes I show that, and then somebody in the audience will ask, doesn't that make you depressed? Aren't you sad, for all the things you've lost? And that's the other side, is the city isn't something to despair of. The city is a fantastic place. And for the most part, what does the city do well? It satisfies a sense of meaning. And it'd be hard to find a city that works as well as New York in terms of satisfying a diversity of senses of meaning to so many people from so many different walks of life and cultures and places all over the world.
I've heard you describe yourself as a landscape ecologist.
Right.
Did you realize you wanted to be a landscape ecologist when you grew up?
So a landscape ecologist is someone who studies the ecology of landscapes, which that doesn't help very much, but to an ecologist, a landscape is the composition of all the ecosystems on the land. It's sort of like the view what you would get from an airplane. So a forest over here, a stream over here, the coastline and the beach there. And so each of those different ecosystems relates to each other, just like different neighborhoods in the city relate to each other. So a landscape ecologist tries to figure out why are they patterned the way they are, why are they distributed the way they are, and how do they change over time, and what are the consequences of those patterns and changes for the plants and animals that live there.
I wanted to ask you, because I know you came from California and you were a nature lover in California. What was it like coming to the big city of New York?
Well, so I grew up in Northern California and spent a lot of time backpacking and hiking and snowshoeing and camping. And when I was in high school, I walked the John Muir Trail in California, 200 miles from Yosemite to Mount Whitney a couple of times. And so, but then, as fate will have it, I was offered this great job in New York City. And so several years before that, I'd come to New York City and had walked around and thinking I was going to go to this foreign land and I wasn't going to like it. But I kind of liked it. I liked the energy, and I liked the diversity, and I liked how you could go to different neighborhoods and they were all really different from each other. And one of the things I've discovered is there actually is a lot of nature in New York. My wife and I are kayakers, and we go sea kayaking a lot. We live on City Island, and we can kayak around the island, or up on the Connecticut shore, or in the Hudson River, or even in the harbor. you know, it's not, if you look, nature's here. And, you know, one of the stories of New York is how nature has been returning to the city because we've been allowing it to by changing our practices.
What is your very favorite thing about Manhattan now?
I think my favorite thing in Manhattan is Inwood Park, up in the northern end of Manhattan, which a lot of Manhattanites don't know, but it's a really beautiful park with some really big trees and a changed geography, but not a geography that's not entirely dissimilar from what it once was. So you can sort of imagine what it was like.
Just wanted to ask you, what's next? Is there life after Mannahatta? I think you're going on to do some kind of contest about future visions of the city. Can you tell us more about that?
You know, Mannahatta is sort of culminating in 2009. But we don't want the project to live only in the past. You know, we're really interested in having it have a future as well. And so the future for Mannahatta is thinking about cities as ecologically complete entities. So, you know, I've been working with Social Science Research Council and the Van Allen Institute on a competition idea that would ask architects, urban planners, and social scientists and natural scientists to work together to imagine solutions to the ecologically complete city, a city that works as ecologically well as Mannahatta did 400 years ago, but with 1.5 million people and with all the things that come with that and all that entails. And so, but actually trying to really put the question in its sort of core ecological terms, in terms that everybody can understand and respond to. You know, where should the food come from? If you could remake this landscape, you know, the way I've remade Mannahatta in the computers, to satisfy the food requirements of the city and the water requirements and the shelter requirements and handle its waste and provide enough energy and transportation and still be the beautiful, meaningful, you know, dynamic city that we know today.
Do you think the knowledge is already out there for that type of vision and it just has to be mobilized?
Yeah, no, my reading is that there are so many great ideas about how to build cities better. But right now it's sort of done on a per building basis, right? You know, this building has this sort of green rating, and this one has a green roof, and this other one, you know, has a fuel cell in its basement. You know, and we're starting to think about how those come together and make parks and make civic spaces and that sort of thing. But I haven't seen it actually realized for a real place. And that's what we want to try and do with this competition is reach in to all that great stuff that exists in architecture and urban planning and put it into one landscape, to sort of shape that one landscape the way Mannahatta was shaped. So it works for people and it works for nature and it's ecologically efficient, so it's complete and sustainable over the long run so that we can have a New York City here another 400 years from now.